What's going on, everybody? I hope that you are doing well. My name is Veasey, and first of all, before we go any further, I just want to thank you for clicking on this message, this clip, and allowing this video to serve as a place of spiritual nourishment, professional nourishment, emotional nourishment, and development. This is what I believe. I believe that the outcome of our life, to a degree, is affected by who we allow to speak into our lives and who we give our ear to. So the people that we're seeking counsel from, the people that we're seeking advice from, all these people who are speaking into our lives play a role in how we make decisions and how we process information. So I want to thank you truly for selecting this video to add value to your life. I hope that you all are safe, maintaining your distance during this pandemic. I understand that the times that we're in, and I wanted to make this video to ensure that we're not only spending time developing our physical body, but that we're taking time to develop the emotional aspect of our life, the mental aspect of our life, and the spiritual aspect of our life for those of us who are believers, that we're taking time to do this. So what we're going to be discussing today is rejection, and we're going to be talking about rejection from a spiritual aspect and from a natural aspect, and really just tying those two together and understanding, how rejection plays a role in our lives and how we develop, how we pursue opportunities, and all those things. And we're going to be discussing, rejection, and we're going to dive deep into some things. So I really hope that you enjoy it. Isiah, what's going on, bro?
Yo, what's up, Veasey? How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm glad you're here, bro. What's going on?
Bless, trying to stay safe out here. Trying, social distancing.
Yeah.
That's number one around here,
Absolutely.
Come on now.
Yeah, man. So talking about rejection, so what I want to ask you is, when you think about rejection and you hear rejection, what's one of the first things that come to your mind?
Man, rejection is something that never feels good. It's something that hurts, and it's something that people are afraid of. There's so many things we can be rejected from, I just want to go in and start talking about them. I had been rejected a couple times in high school, and I felt hurt because of it. And the reason I felt hurt was because of growing up getting ridiculed of my weight and my appearance by my peers and my family, which is a strong point I want to talk about later. But going back to high school rejection, after being rejected, it made me question, was the rumors of my childhood true? Did girls not want me because I was fat or because of my hair? Being rejected is never fun, and it brings you back to your childhood or something that pulls you down. It makes you question, was I ever good enough, cute enough? Rejection can have that possibility to bring low self-esteem in who you are. So if I fast forward to college again, I failed to find me a lady because it was easier to ask a girl out or tell her how pretty she was through Tinder and Instagram and other social medias. My thought process was, if I just ask a girl out or talk to her through social media, it would save me the hurt and the fear of being rejected in person. Does that make sense?
I'm glad you brought that up, because usually whenever we bring up rejection or rejection is talked about, most people's minds gravitate toward a romantic relationship or the pursuit of a relationship, right? Like, that's the first thing that people's mind gravitate towards. But truth be told, man, when we talk about rejection, if you were denied a promotion, if you were cut from a team, if you were denied, didn't get the interview, if you didn't get the job, if you were kicked out of the clubhouse as a kid, right? Those are all forms of rejection, right? It's not just romantic relationships, and it's not just a pursuit of romantic relationships, right? So I'm glad you brought that up, so that we could hit that point. But when we talk about, starts talking about rejection, right? Rejection is a wound to the soul, right? Right. Rejection is a wound to the soul. So, and when rejection happens, right? Rejection is an event, right? It's not identity. And when rejection happens, usually people wear the event as identity, as opposed to seeing it as, okay, this opportunity wasn't for me, this person wasn't for me. But we wear that and we carry it with us and allow it to infect us, right?
Yeah.
So just kind of, so for you, kind of just going deeper into rejection and those experiences or those events that have taken place, just if you kind of want to dive deeper into how that affected you and how you kind of pursued opportunities as a result of having faced rejection.
Man, I like what you said, that, all the different types of rejection, where you said it can be from, from a relationship aspect, it can be from, a job aspect, an opportunity aspect.
Yeah.
And, there's several, different things about, what I've went through in my life, about rejection. But, the biggest one for me is, females. I'm 25
Right.
years old. And I'm at a point in my life to where I have 2 degrees. I graduated college, right?
Yeah.
And usually people who go through college, that's where they find their soulmate, right?
Right.
So,
Or at least we hope anyway.
right.
Right.
That's
Right.
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 Some of them doing it 12 or 13, no offense to the people out there. But I don't have that right now. So, there's a lot of times where, I've asked girls out in high school, and I've always got rejected.
Yeah.
And then, as soon as they rejected me, I'll go back to my childhood, and
Yeah.
I go back to, my family, telling me, hey, you're fat, you're ugly, you never be anything, nobody would ever like you. And those times of when I was in high school and being rejected, by pretty females, I automatically started to think those thoughts,
Right.
and I feel like that's nowhere that God, wanted for me to think.
Yeah, man, that's real good.
So that's rejection from, females. And so, I'm gonna tell you one thing, that, because like college, I never asked a girl out in person. I've always went through, a dating website or social media, because social media and dating websites always saved me from the fear of being rejected.
Right,
and going
right,
through what
right,
I went through
exactly.
in high school. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And
So
I didn't want that fear of being rejected all over again. So to save me from that, I went through, Tinder and social media.
right, so you brought up 2 points that I really want to hop on. The first point that you brought up was, you said, the rejection that I experienced in my childhood and from females changed my approach in terms of the pursuit of romantic relationships. You said,
Yes, sir.
right, so that rejection that you experienced, whether it was from a female, whether it was from, family members in your childhood, as opposed to approaching females in person and trying to have a conversation with them or get to know them, you would rather take the approach of, getting to know them through a social media platform. Right?
That's right.
And
Right.
and you weren't, and it doesn't make you a bad person, right? It just, the reason you did that was because you're trying to protect your heart.
Right.
Right.
Protect my younger self.
Right, protect your heart. Right. There's always a big
Right.
there's always a big person in us protecting the little person in us.
Come on.
Right? So the rejection, what ultimately unacknowledged and suppressed rejection causes an infection, right? And that infection, right, and when you suppress it or don't acknowledge it, right, usually we see the infection manifest itself through personality traits or the way that we pursue opportunities. That's how we see that, right? So if you are cold, if you are callous in your approach, if you are just so emotionally unavailable or just you have an inability to connect, right? That comes from somewhere, right? And that infection, right, from the rejection, that's a real thing that people deal with, right? And you hit it so perfectly, just describing your experience when you said, yeah, so I stopped approaching them in person because I didn't want to, their rejection.
Different bring-ups.
And honestly, it is illogical and irrational to think that you will never experience rejection at all in your life. It's going to happen. Whether you're applying for a job, applying for a scholarship, applying to college, pursuing a romantic relationship, whether you're denied for a loan, you're going to experience rejection in one way or another. So if Jesus the Christ The perfect man who thought everything that should be thought, said everything that should be said, handled people the way that they should always be handled, responded to situations in the way that they should always be responded to. If he experienced rejection, then why would we think that we would never ever experience rejection in our life? I think that's irrational. I think that's illogical too, right? And for those of us who who have the correct perspective of ourselves, right? Because I honestly believe this, that your ability to handle and deal and manage rejection will stem from you having the correct perspective of yourself.
That's right.
Right. So if you have the correct perspective, if you're pursuing a job and you're denied the job, but you have the correct perspective of yourself, instead of saying, I wasn't good enough for them, or I wasn't good enough for that job, you'll say, that job wasn't for me. There's something better out there for me. There's another job out there that better suits my gifts, my talents, and my abilities, right? Having the right perspective of yourself will have a huge impact on how you deal with rejection, how you manage the rejection, and ultimately what you do after that event, the rejection took place. Because for some people, for the people who are able to have a correct perspective of themselves, they can handle the rejection and say, cool, that wasn't for me. There's something out there better for me. There is a job that better suits my talents, my gifts, my abilities, and I'm going to pursue that. But if you don't manage the rejection the right way, that could lead you to make destructive and detrimental decisions, right? So from your perspective, my question to you is, how have you seen rejection cause people to make detrimental decisions, and what are some of those decisions that people usually make after rejection takes place?
Okay, when you say that, like, there's different types of,
So let's say there's a guy he's been wanting to talk to this girl for a very long time. He's attracted to her. He's attracted to her physically. He loves her personality. In their values align. And one day he's been waiting on it for a couple of months, right? He's been trying to build up the courage to approach this girl and talk to her for a couple of months. And let's say one day he gets the courage to approach her and finally that day comes, he gets that courage to talk to her and to introduce himself to her. But she kind of blows him off and just says, hey, I really don't see you, in a romantic kind of way. I just think we should just kind of keep it as friends, right? Because that's rejection, right? That's rejection. So from that perspective, in that situation, given the rejection that took place in this situation, what are some of the decisions that people usually make when rejection like this takes place?
Well, the first feeling, let's be real, the first feeling they're going to feel is, disappointment.
Absolutely.
They're going to feel hurt, and sometimes, that hurt can produce a lot of other issues.
Right.
Especially if it happens multiple times, they can, you can have the spirit of loneliness that can come over you, depression, anxiety, any of those spirits can come, and it makes you feel like you're not good enough, right?
Right, absolutely.
So you'll just go out there and you'll just do, you'll find another resort. Some people, will go straight to sin and do something that's, way off the charge, like, watching pornography to make them feel better about themselves, or just going out there and just having sex with another lady.
I've learned this. When emotionally traumatic events take place, we all run to something. Right. Everybody runs to something. And the foundation that you've built your life on, or the foundation that you haven't built your life on, will dictate and determine what you run to when you're disappointed or when your heart gets broken. Right. I'm glad you talked about this and you brought up loneliness and you thought about, people running to pornography and the spirit of loneliness that creeps in, right? And, and that's why it's so important that you have a foundation that your life is built on, and that that you're drawing your, especially for those of us who are believers, that your foundation is God and God's word, because you draw your sense of identity, your sense of worth, your sense of value from who God says you are and who he created you to be, right? And that it's tied to him, right? Because you have an unshakable, unmovable foundation, right? When all these things pass away, when the jobs pass away, when the girl rejects you, when you deny the promotion, right? Your foundation is unshaken, right? So, and I think that's so important, because how you handle the events that happen in your life, the decisions that you make after these events take place, determine the course that you're going to walk, right? You can make one decision after experiencing rejection that changes the course of your entire life, right? When you don't have the correct perspective of yourself, and you are just emotionally so distraught about rejection, ultimately what you're saying is, I value what you think about me more than I value what I think about me. I know who I am as a man, right? If someone makes up this lie about me and I believe what they say, right? The way I react determines who I believe the most. Right? So, and if what you say about me changes my mood, or changes the way that I think about me after hearing what you think about me, right, then you're placing your self-worth in someone else's hands. And that's too much power to give to someone. To someone who is not God. Right? That's way too much power to give to someone. So the correct self-perspective, right?
But like you said earlier, that all goes into your identity, knowing your true identity. Your identity in Christ Jesus. And are you knowing who you are in Christ,
Usually, what we'll do to make sure that we don't experience the rejection is, we'll usually conform our standards, our values, and our preferences. We'll conform those things according to the group or individual that we're trying to seek the approval from. Right? So that if I like what you like, if I dress how you dress, if I speak the way you speak, use the language that you use, the same language that you use, then you will accept me, right? And we'll do those things, to prevent ourselves from having the experience to deal with the rejection, and that's such a dangerous place to be. It really is, especially for, I think, growing up. And the reason that this platform was created, the reason I speak the way I do at conferences, or whether it's to a youth group, is so that they can apply these principles early, so that they can experience a fruitful life at an early age, and so that they're making healthy decisions at a young age, right? So that they're on a course of wholeness in pursuit of purpose and destiny, right? Right? Because, you said it perfectly. The way you handle the experiences that occurred at a young age determines the way you make decisions for the rest of your life.
That's right.
Right? So, and so just kind of talking about, we spent a great deal of time talking about the different types of rejection, what happens in some of the decisions that are made, through rejection. So from your perspective, what are some ways that we can overcome rejection, right? And deal with it, right? So that we don't have to live a life of making decisions from a place of disappointment and brokenness and hurt and rejection. What are some of the things that we can do to overcome this wound and this infection called rejection?
Well, the first one is, don't give up, hang in there.
Yeah.
And try it again. Just because you get knocked down, you got to get back up again.
I think one of the first steps that you have to do is acknowledge it. right? Acknowledge
Yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
You can't solve a problem that you that you refuse to, or just won't identify or won't acknowledge, right? You have to acknowledge, even if you
Shame
don't,
the fact you got rejected.
even if you don't acknowledge it to the other person, acknowledge it to yourself. Listen, not getting this promotion hurt me. Being rejected by that girl, it hurt me, right? Not being accepted to this university or college, that hurt. I don't like the way that it feels. I feel like I should have got in. I feel like, we would have been great together. You have to acknowledge it, right? You have to acknowledge it, bring it to the forefront, because if you leave it in darkness, it's just going to thrive. It's going to thrive, and it's going to fester, and it's going to turn into an infection, affect your personality traits, and affect how you make decisions and how you receive information. It affects how you receive information and how you process information, and you begin to become cynical, right? Oh, they're just out to get me, or she, and or you do this. You deny yourself before the other person gets an opportunity to deny you. You dismiss yourself before the other person gets an opportunity to dismiss you, right? You write yourself off before pursuing the opportunity, right? So we have to be willing to acknowledge it. Don't lie to yourself. Acknowledge it. And secondly, talk to someone that you trust about it.
Right.
Talk to someone that you trust about it, right? Get it out. You gotta get it out. Yeah, being able to talk to one another, right? In a trusted space, right? In a very trusted space, because when you're exposing your soul to someone, that's a trusted space. Especially for guys, it's very hard to do that. So it's very hard for guys to do that. So when you have someone that you confide in and someone that you trust, right? Go to them, talk to them about it. Hey man, I got to talk to you about this. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm dealing with. And you feel better about it, right?
That's right. And it's dangerous if you keep that mess bottled up inside.
Absolutely.
That's what it
Absolutely. And you want to talk to someone who's like-minded and someone who's going to give you sound and wise advice.
Come on.
You don't want to talk to someone who's going to, hey man, you need to just go do this. Hey man, she denied you. Go get with this girl and go, handle, right. And have you make a decision that may make you feel better in the moment, but that's just going to set you back emotionally, right? So you want to talk to someone who's going to give you sound advice, and it's going to help you make a wise decision when you're in this, and someone who's going to listen to you, right? Someone who's going to show empathy before they try to give you solutions.
And it don't make you less of a man by telling your feelings.
Man, come on, man.
To another man.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I have no shame in my game telling you about, what Susie did to me last week.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a real thing,
How
man.
can I fix this? How can I,
Absolutely.
And, I don't know how many times I came to you and be like, man, how do I deal with this situation?
Yeah.
I feel this way about this situation.
Right.
And I don't want to go over the roof on this girl or whatever the situation may be. It can be through jobs. I've come to you through jobs. It doesn't have to be necessarily just about relationships and females and asking girls out. It can be about jobs. It can be about anything in your life that you're dealing with, that you're struggling with,
right? And especially if you're a strong man and you deal with rejection, naturally you're going to want to build yourself back up.
That's right.
You're naturally going to want to build yourself back up. So you will engage in activities and make decisions that build you back up, right? And and you made such a great point, man. You just having someone to talk to, right? Being able to express your feelings. We can talk about whether or not it's right or wrong later, but how you feel is how you feel.
That's right.
Right. We can discuss whether or not it's right or wrong later, right? Whether or not it's healthy later. But right now, listen, I'm listening to you. You're talking to me about how you're feeling, and we can deal with how you should go about correcting this later, right? And of course, for us being believers, of course that will come through prayer, right? Prayer and going to God about it. But having someone to talk to is huge, right? It's huge. First thing was acknowledge it. Don't suppress it. The second thing was find someone who you trust, not only to expose your feelings to, but someone who you trust to give you sound and wise advice, counsel, and information about how to deal with it. And thirdly, don't allow it to affect how you make decisions and pursue opportunities. You can't allow it to do that. You can't allow it to throw you off course, right? And these, and you have to be, and this is something that you have to be intentional about. Self-awareness is huge, and not a lot of people live with it. Very few people live with self-awareness. It's huge, right? You know, so you have to be aware of how that event or that experience has affected you, right? And you can see it in the way that you're talking to people, the way that you're treating people, you know, the way that you're pursuing other opportunities. You can see that if you're paying attention to it, right? And before we got into the third point, you talked about the dangers of suppressing it. So just kind of dive into that real quick.
Okay, so like before I said it earlier, you know, balling it up inside, what that can do is, like you said, it can change your character, it can change your behavior. You know, sometimes you can be mad and not know what you're mad about until you actually realize the fact, you know, of the situation. You know, I've seen people, you know, pissed off about, you know, people about their job and what's been going on to them, and they didn't know that it was changing the content of their character.
Absolutely.
Until I had to, you know, tell them like what's going on and why they feel that way. It was like, you know what? That makes sense. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
Because they're not used to opening up to people. But, you know, I was, you know, once we found out what was truly bothering him and what I told him, you know, especially everything that he told me what was going on with him at his job and whatnot, I was able to help him. But like you said, the first thing we need to do is realize what the situation is.
Right. So we really want to take the time to really dive into just talking about rejection today. I hope you learned something. Guys, if anything that was said in this video caused a perspective shift or caused you to think about some things in a new light, or shine some light on some things in your life, there's a few things that I'm going to ask you to do. One, share it with someone. There's someone out there who wants the information that you just got. There's someone out there who needs the information that you just got. It may be a friend, a close relative. There's someone out there who needs this information and who's waiting on this information, and you just got it. So if it caused a perspective shift or caused you to think about some things in a new light, then please share this with someone. Second thing I'm going to ask you to do is subscribe to this information, subscribe to this channel so that you can stay updated with all the content that we're going to be sending out, all the content that we're going to be putting out, so that you never miss a video. And third, the most important thing that I'm going to ask you to do, apply these principles to your life. Put these principles to the test, right? It's not enough to just have the information stored in our brilliant intellectual minds, right? We must apply this information. We are living in a culture, in a society that is addicted, absolutely addicted to the consumption of information, but we are allergic to the application of the information, right? So don't be one of those people who have so much knowledge and so much advice and so much intellect, but we can't see the fruit of that because you're not applying the principles to your life. If you believe in these principles, if you believe these principles help you, then apply them to your life so that you can see the fruit of these principles, and so that ultimately you can be the best version of who you're called to be. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Stay sharp.